Media. I think Lonnie was in such a panic for so long. Like really, just get over it. This is happening right now. You know what I mean? And so you either put up or shut up, because if you don't, we're gonna get caught.
You're listening to
Path of the Jedi.
with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this annoying adventure. That's right, annoying adventure. Okay, so first off, not Star Wars. Star Wars is definitely not annoying. I absolutely love and adore Star Wars. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know that I have a passion and an appreciation and love for all things Star Wars. So no, Star Wars is not annoying, and nor is Andor. Andor is an incredible show. We're going to be talking about Andor season 2, episode 6 today. What a festive evening! And even this episode, I don't think that this episode itself is annoying. It's actually quite the banger. It's the third episode in this particular arc, so it's the conclusion. So a lot happens. A lot happens in this episode. So yeah, a lot of great stuff, and it's a real powerful episode. So it's none of those things, but I chose the word annoying originally for one reason, which I'll get into, but a second reason has since come to light and makes perfect sense for today. For the word being annoying, I've been sitting here trying to record this opener for I don't know the last 4 hours now at this point, and I just am having a hard time getting through it. I've started over and over again, probably 30, maybe up to 40 times, and it's just one of those days. It's just one of those days. Concentration and focus are particularly difficult today, and like I've learned to kind of manage that in life in general, but on days when I have to do, work like this, where it takes a pretty decent amount of concentration and focus, it's just an added hurdle to the production process. So yeah, I'm just, really, really annoyed and agitated and irritated at myself and just annoyed at the state of being of not of the difficulty of focus and concentration. Yeah, it's just really really inconvenient on days like today. But the original the original reason why I chose the word annoying is because in this particular episode of Andor, I just there were so many characters that I found annoying. Their behavior, their actions, and their words. I'm just like, oh my god, I was so irritated by so many characters, and by the end of it, very much like last week, I felt worked up and agitated and really really very very irritated. Now, before I go on to explain specific things that I was annoyed at, I want to remind you that you're going to hear some spoilers in today's episode. So if you haven't seen this particular episode of Andor season 2, episode 6, I encourage you to pause the show and go watch that particular episode of Andor, and then come back to the podcast afterwards. Again, I do not want to be the reason why any specific details or things get spoiled and get ruined for you in watching the show, especially this episode, which again is the closer for this particular arc.
Classified, really? Me too. Big secret.
Okay, so what is it that I'm so annoyed at in this episode? Well, let's just list it out, starting with Lonnie. Now, historically, Lonnie is a character that I really liked in this show. I think he's to be commended. The role that he's played in the rebellion is to be commended, at least in this side of the rebellion, in Luthen's operations. And this is despite the fact that he's wanted to get out, right? He's been forced to stay deeply embedded in the Empire, at great risk to himself and at great risk to his family, and he's carried out his role very very dutifully. So he's to be commended for that, and that's why I've liked him. However, in this particular episode, when he gets to the party, the soiree, the fancy fundraiser, and he's forced into a little bit of a tough situation in helping Clea retrieve the listening device, he just absolutely panics, right? And it's not that he panicked for like the first 3 to 5 minutes and then cool down. Like he was panicking the entire time. And I understand that it's a really, really dangerous situation. And I have no idea what it's like to be in that position. However, you'd think that after being so deeply embedded in the empire and doing the work that he's done for so long, that he would act with a little bit more cool. I mean, obviously, Clea and Luthen are seasoned at what they do, and I just kind of expect the same from Luthen, from Lonnie. At the very least, not as panicked as he reacted. Right, in reacting the way he reacted, he actually put them at more risk than he would have if he had just kept his mouth shut, if he had just kept his cool and gone along with what Clay had told him to do. Thankfully, they were able to pull it off without a hitch and without getting noticed as being suspicious. But yeah, for me, it just kind of feels like they made him that way to create more tension in the scene. Now, that's not a criticism necessarily to the writing because it did create a lot of tension and it makes perfect sense to be in that situation and to be in a little bit of a panic. I mean, Krennic was in the freaking room for crying out loud. And so yeah, there was a lot happening. There was a lot going on. And again, I can't say how I would react in that same situation because I've never been in that position. But I just found it so annoying because I think it dragged on. I think Lonnie was in such a panic for so long. Like really, just get over it. This is happening right now. You know what I mean? And so you either put up or shut up, because if you don't, we're gonna get caught. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's one, and actually the most minor thing that I was annoyed at in this episode. The next thing that I'm annoyed at in this episode are the Gormans. Now, I don't think I've made it a secret that I find them incredibly annoying from the very beginning. They're just so arrogant. They're just so arrogant. Their inability to put their egos aside, is just yeah, it boggles my mind. Which I guess for me, I will preface this by saying all of these cases are just my own personal reaction. I don't know how you've reacted to any of these characters in any of these cases. But I would think for me in this situation, I don't want to do anything that's counterproductive to the thing I'm trying to accomplish. And if that means putting my own ego and arrogance aside, then absolutely, especially when it's something as dangerous as what they're trying to accomplish, especially if it's something that they've never done before and have no expertise or experience in. Why wouldn't you take the advice and orders from people who have been doing this for years and years and years, from people whom you yourself invited to help you? Right, to give that much lip and attitude to somebody that you are asking help from to accomplish this thing that you're trying to accomplish, I think is just bonkers to me. And I found it so irritating. I found their attitude so irritating. And then not to mention Lazine, right? Lazine. Okay, so if you don't know who Lazine is, he's the one local guy that's for some reason dressed like a cobbler. I know they are a fashion society, right? Like their main industry is textiles and fashion, but like they have him dressed as a cobbler. Anyways, he's just a cantankerous individual, Lazine. He was the guy in the underground meeting who gave the hand on the arm insult gesture. I mean, like I don't really know exactly what it means, and I don't think anybody does. It's not specifically stated. However, it's just universal that it was meant to be an insult. So this guy comes walking up in the middle of this very, very dangerous operation. Clearly, there's something going on. Clearly, it's with the band of rebels that you had seen in that underground meeting. And he just strolls right in like he belongs there, like he's the boss, like he's like what was his purpose, right? What was his purpose for doing that? And then of course, like a scuffle ensues, and Cinta accidentally gets shot. And then he helps like it wasn't his fault, right? Right, like he picks up Cinta's body and helps the rebels get make their getaway, as if he wasn't a contributing factor to her getting shot. So incredibly annoying. Like what was the purpose of that other than to figure out a way to have Cinta get killed? Really, really annoying. And again, like completely plausible. Both these scenarios with Lonnie and the Gorman resistance, how they unfolded, completely plausible, right? And so that's why, again, I'm not annoyed at the episode. I'm not annoyed at the writing, or any of that. I'm just annoyed at the characters, right? I'm annoyed at how they behaved, and well, because maybe this is how I watch. I watch movies and TV. I place myself in those situations, and because I really like to immerse myself in those things, and when characters behave in a way that makes zero sense to me, especially if it's super counterproductive to what they're trying to accomplish, I find it so incredibly irritating. Lastly, we have the king of annoying, Luthen Rael himself. That's right, Luthen. I don't know if you're expecting that one, but Luthen is a character that I've never liked. I've never liked. Now, let me backtrack and say that I love Stellan Skarsgård. I think he's an incredible actor. I've been a big fan of his forever, and I love how he's portrayed this particular character. Right, I love how he's performed in in this show. And I love the writing. I love how this character is written, and all the main characters really. There's so much depth and there's so many layers to these characters. However, if Luthen were a real person, yeah, I would not like him. I would not like him at all. I don't trust him, for one. If I were joining a cause, it would not be through Luthen for sure. I mean, I don't like how he treats people. I don't like how he manipulates people into doing what he wants them to do, and then turn around and be so sanctimonious about it when they disagree. In the opening of this episode, where he picks up Cassian from the Gorman mission, we see that, like, even with Cassian, that there are ulterior motives, right? We know he sent Cassian as a fact finding mission, right, to gain intel from the Gorman resistance, to see if that would be, if Gorman would be a viable staging ground for the growing rebellion. But the secondary mission was to check up on Cassian and to test him, right? I mean, why else have Cassian followed and reported on, if not to test him? And my thing is, like, if you didn't really trust Cassian in the first place, if you were unsure of him, then why send him? Why send him at all? Right? Why send him at all? And so it's these kind of double dealings and this underhandedness, that really, yeah, I get so irritated with Luthen, for because I think he could be so much more effective if he didn't do all these underhanded kind of back dealings, right? If he didn't have these ulterior motives, if he didn't go behind people's backs, I think he could potentially get more done, and be a more effective leader, if this was the case. Of course, there's got to be a huge level of cloak and dagger and secrecy, but it's in his treatment of people that I think makes him an ineffective leader for this rebellion, for this resistance. We see in a conversation with Clea not long after that scene that Luthen doesn't really think of his operatives as people. I think he sees them more as assets or liabilities, right? As pawns in a game, to be maneuvered so that he can get the outcome that he wants. Even in their coded language, he refers to Cassian as a piece, saying that this piece is not what we need. And Clea's response to that was, "Yeah, I mean, we knew that already." So, this mission was really just to confirm their suspicions about Cassian's, I guess, usefulness, for this particular mission, anyways. On top of that, in the classic Clea, cool and collected and calculated way, responds by saying, "We already have another asset in play, or we already have another piece in play," referring, of course, to Vel and Cinta. And that's where this conversation is going. I think thematically, this episode is about Vel and Cinta and sacrifice, and never forgetting what it is you're sacrificing for, what it is you're fighting for. I think after years of sacrifice and risk, and all the dangers that they put themselves through, all the physical, mental, emotional risks that they're taking, in prioritizing the cause, prioritizing the mission and the directive, these two are finally realizing and embracing why they've been fighting in the first place, and that is for each other. they've become more like Cassian and Bix in this sense, who I think came to this realization and came to this point in their relationship somewhere in between, or well, somewhere after season one, right? In between the two seasons. Um, uh, I think one of the things that makes Cassian such an effective fighter and such an effective rebel in this story is that he's always known why he's fighting. He's always had really a deep connection to his participation in this whole thing. Sure, we see in Rogue One that he seems to have lost connection with that, and he's not the same Cassian that we know currently in this episode. However, by the end of Rogue One, he is reconnected to his sense of purpose and to the reason why he's in the fight in the first place. Contrast that to Lonnie. I don't think Lonnie has as deep a sense of purpose as Vel and Cinta. Certainly not as deep a sense of purpose as Cassian and Bix. Yes, he has been effective in his role thus far, but I think the primary reason for his participation in the first place is cowardice. Outside of the intimidation and coercion that he receives from Clea in this episode, he's been intimidated and coerced and manipulated into staying in the rebellion, staying in the fight by Luthen. He's afraid of what Luthen might do to him and his family. He's afraid of being exposed by Luthen for his participation in all of this. Now, you might be saying, given his position and his role, that his fears are warranted. However, remember that Vel insisted that Cinta be a part of this mission. That was the condition of her own participation. And same thing with Cassian. He's not going to let Luthen push him around and intimidate him. And in fact, in this episode, earlier in the episode, he starts to throw his weight around, right? I think Cassian really knows his value as an operative in this rebellion, and he confronts Luthen at Luthen's store, at great risk, mind you, of being exposed. But he confronts Luthen at the store, and he pretty much tells Luthen, "Look, my continued participation in this entire thing will depend on you fixing this situation. So fix it, right?" So yeah, I mean, like I can understand Lonnie's um, trepidation, but I think if he had a deeper connection to a sense of purpose of why he's participating in this rebellion and why he's putting himself at such great risk, he would know his value and his worth to the rebellion, which I think would leave him much less susceptible to being pushed around, to intimidation and manipulation. Now, for the Gormans, I don't know that they really have any clue as to the level of sacrifice required for a movement or for a resistance like the one they're trying to accomplish, right? Like the one they're trying to start. I think they're playing at it, and I think they believe they know the level of sacrifice, and that's why they're so eager. But in reality, like, yeah, they have no idea. I mean, they don't even know what they're fighting for in the first place. I think they're still in this episode in the dark about all the things that are happening. Carl Rylance even says to Cyril a few episodes back that he believes there's a shadow government, right, with the ISB, and he enlists Cyril's help as a way to help the Empire. So these Gormans have no idea what they're fighting for, nor do they have any clue as to this level of sacrifice required for the thing that they're actually fighting, for this resistance and this movement that they're so eager to spark. They were dealt with a really harsh reality check at the end of this episode with the death of Cinta. Cinta's death was 100% their responsibility. It wasn't at the hands of an adversary, it wasn't at the hands of the Empire. Cinta died because of their own arrogance, because of their own over eagerness and unwillingness to listen to reason, to listen to experience, to follow orders. They thought they knew what they were fighting for, but in reality, they had no idea. I think if they did, they would have had a healthier respect for the seriousness of this all, right? A healthier respect and understanding for the dangers and the risks. But of course, pride and ego and arrogance leave little room for respect. And that's actually a good segue to bring the conversation to Luthen. I don't think Luthen has any respect for anyone or anything. to be honest. Otherwise, he wouldn't treat his people, his most important people, as pawns. He wouldn't treat these individuals that are on the front lines serving his missions as expendable. He has shown zero respect for any of the sacrifices that they've made, and in fact, just continually asks for more and more and more. He makes all the decisions and gives all the orders, but takes none of the responsibilities. He's always preaching how the cause and winning the war will exact a high price, a high toll. And he has this expectation of everybody that everybody be willing to pay the ultimate price. But really, what price has he paid? What sacrifice has he made? None, really, at least from what we've seen in the show, in the 2 seasons of the show. Now, maybe prior to all of this, in his backstory, when he first started this movement, maybe he had to make some really big sacrifices. But really, I mean, that's just until it's written, it's just conjecture. And by the time we get to this show, to get to season 1 in Andor, I think we see him as an individual who's so detached from any of that. I think he's just so far removed from whatever it was that got him to mobilize and start this movement in the first place, that he's completely lost himself in the fight. I think he's lost that line between his own identity and the war. In his mind, they're one and the same. And this is why he's so willing to sacrifice anyone and everyone, right? Even his best operatives. He's willing to send anyone to the front lines and put them in mortal danger as long as it serves the mission. Heck, he's even willing to sacrifice the entirety of Gore if it meant that Gore could serve as the catalyst to spark a full-on rebellion. Now, of course, fighting to topple a fascist and oppressive regime is a worthy cause. But I think unlike Bix and Cassian and Vel and Cinta and even Mon Mothma, at this point, I really, really do feel that Luthen has lost connection to what really is at stake, why they're fighting in the first place. I think at this point in the story, he's in the fight just for the sake of the fight. He wants to win at all costs, but I think he's lost sight of why. Yes, he has his fingers and his hands on all the intel and all the strategy and all these, different moving pieces, which, by the way, he can barely keep up with now at this point. If you remember, I think last episode or the one before that, he had a meltdown with Clea because there was too many moving pieces, right? He can't even keep up. But despite all this, like he has all these machinations and he has his hands and fingers in all these baskets. However, the people that are really moving the needle on the rebellion are the ones that are most connected to their reason for fighting, right? Are the ones that have that purpose, that know why they're in the fight and they're in the trenches. They know why they're taking the risks and making the sacrifices. Luthen, I don't think does. And that's why he so easily tosses everyone in front of the fire. And unfortunately, as we see in this episode, not everybody makes it. And honestly, I think by the end of it, we're going to lose even more people. I guess the hypothetical that I'm getting to is if you're willing to sacrifice the very thing you are fighting for in the first place, then is it really worth fighting? Now, of course, in this context, the answer is yes. It's absolutely necessary, especially for the plot, right? Like it drives the story forward, and we all know where the story is going. However, in reality, I think there are many ways to achieve the thing you're trying to achieve without having to ask such a steep price from people, or even forcing them to make those kinds of sacrifices. So, what's the lesson here for us? I think the question is, number one, what is your fight? Right? What is your mission? Number two, what are you fighting for? Right? Why are you fighting? Why are you on this mission? Why are you working to achieve the thing that you're trying to achieve? You got to know this. You have to have the answer, or you might end up sacrificing the very thing you were fighting for in the first place. Whether you're working on achieving your lifelong goals and your dreams, right? You're hustling and you're grinding and you're in that fight, or whether you live in a literal war zone where it's just constant conflict day to day. Hopefully that's not the case, but I think this applies to all those scenarios. If you do not know or have forgotten why you're fighting in the first place, then I think you've already lost the fight. To give a real world example of what I'm trying to get at here, I'm going to share with you a little bit of my background as a professional network marketer. I have been in the network marketing profession for nearly 20 years now. I originally was attracted to this business because of the potential I saw and the ability to be able to create financial freedom and therefore time freedom. Because the truth is, I actually wanted to pursue things like music and performance and acting and filmmaking, the creative things. But it was getting harder and harder to do that the older I got. And like, I wasn't necessarily going to be able to be a starving artist for very much longer. And so I really hustled and I grinded in the network marketing profession, especially in my early years. Like I was in the trenches, blood, sweat, and tears, years of blood, sweat, and tears until I finally, quote unquote, made it. I got to the top of my company. I was financially free. I had the choice for time freedom. But by this point, I was so entrenched in the hustle and in the grind that I had, completely pushed aside the things that I was fighting for in the first place. Like in the early years of my career, I was fighting hard and I was again blood, sweat, and tears in the trenches because I knew what I was fighting for. But by the time I got to quote unquote success, I had really almost forgotten about those things and just gotten into maybe the routine of the hustle and the grind and the fight, and that's all I had. I kept getting out there and building the business and staying in the trenches and speaking on the stages, and in the meantime there was an emptiness growing inside of me because I had completely lost sight of what I was doing it all for in the first place. Thankfully I've reconnected with that part of me, and I went out and got a new guitar. I'm playing and practicing more. I'm doing open mics, right? Like I'm putting myself out there to do open mics. Super super rusty and probably really what kids would call cringy nowadays. But it's so fulfilling and it's refilling that part of me that's been missing this whole time. So I guess let my example be a cautionary tale. Yes, do what you have to do to get it done. Absolutely, 100%. But never forget why you're doing it. Make sure you always stay connected to that. Because if you don't, the thing you're fighting for might end up being the thing you sacrifice. Okay, so that's the episode. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it's easy to get so caught up in the chase that you forget why you're chasing in the first place, and that's really what happened to me. I was so caught up in chasing the success and the financial freedom and the time freedom that I forgot why I was chasing those things in the first place. And the examples with Andor were both centered around relationships, right? With Vel and Cinta, yeah, figuring out and really coming to terms with the fact that their love is the thing that they is the reason, is the driving force behind their motivation and why they do what they do. But it doesn't have to be that necessarily, although that's a good reason. Love is a good reason. And I'm not even speaking strictly of romantic love, just love in the general sense of the relationships and the connections we have in this life with other people. I mean, that's a really powerful reason and driver to motivate you to do the things that you do, but never lose sight of that. Otherwise, then the pursuit becomes empty. I think that's really my point. So whatever it is that you're fighting, or whatever it is that you're pursuing, whatever your chase is, whatever your fight is, make sure to never forget and always stay connected to why you're in that fight in the first place, right? And I think it's important to touch back on that and revisit it regularly, revisit. And in the profession that I'm in the motivational world and in business and entrepreneurial world, it's the whole conversation about having a strong why. identifying your why once isn't good enough. You have to really stay connected to it, and revisit it, and even evolve it. Like sometimes your why, your reason for doing things, your motivations change. So yeah, really, really important. I mean, I guess in essence this conversation is about having a strong why. Right, a strong why. Imagine that, Andor teaching us that we need to have a strong why. A strong purpose, a strong purpose. Anyways, let's move on to the shout out. This week's shout out goes to Rose Gooding Robinson. That's right, Rose Gooding Robinson. If you want to find her on Instagram, she is at inspire you the number 2 live, inspire you to live. Rose and I have we've been friends, acquainted for quite a number of years, more than 10 years now at this point. But we met each other through our network marketing business, through our company called Yoli. And yeah, I think we've always been friends. I think we hit it off from the very beginning. And it's not that we're super close necessarily, but we're close. It's one of those connections that you don't have to talk all the time. Like we barely message. I mean, we might hear from each other once a year. We definitely don't see each other often because we're in two completely different parts of the country. So I might see her once a year, if that. So it's not so much that we're like in constant contact, but anytime that we are in contact, there's just something about Rose that I really, really appreciate. I mean, she's always very warm and open for me, and I would hope that she feels the same way. I don't know, but for me, there's always a certain kind of safety in her presence, and compassion and caring, and you really kind of feel it. Easily one of the kindest people that I've ever met, and is always willing to just sit there and be there with you, and yeah, without any judgment, without any pretense, and without any expectation, and so she responded. The reason I bring it up, she responded to a story of mine recently on Instagram, and just again out of the blue. It's not like we have this long ongoing chat thread or anything, right? We don't, like I said, we don't keep in contact like that. But it was just such a nice message out of the blue, responding to a story. She just said, "I love you," right? And this was coming at a time where I was having a particularly difficult day, and so like I don't know that she'll ever know or understand how much I appreciate it. And of course, I responded back and thanked her, and I told her I love her as well. But yeah, just like it's impossible, I think, for me to communicate how much I appreciate that message and how much I needed it. Right? Rose just has this ability to know what to say, when to say it, and she's always been that for me. Again, whether she knows it or not, I have deep gratitude for our relationship and our connection. So yeah, it's just one of those things, and I hope that you have a Rose Gooding Robinson in your life that does the same. Somebody that you can feel safe with, and somebody that always gives you a sense of warmth and welcome and compassion, the way Rose does for me. So Rose, I don't know if you're listening, but hopefully you are, and if you are listening, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you and Denny, and so that's why I wanted to dedicate this week's shout out to you. Okay, so that's going to do it for this week's episode. One last thing before we go, I do want to ask you, if you're not already following the show, hopefully you liked it. I mean, if you're still listening, that is an indicator that you enjoyed it. So if you're not following yet, please go ahead and follow the show. Hit that plus sign on top of whatever app you happen to be listening on, and of course you can hit the subscribe button on the YouTube version. And then beyond that, please share it. Please share this episode. Please share the podcast. We're really working to grow this show and grow the following, because I have a goal for 2027 celebration, Star Wars Celebration 2027, to attend as a podcaster, and I don't know in what shape or form, but to be a presenter or to be a panelist at that particular celebration. So one of the ways that I know that I can get there is by growing the show, and I can only do that with your help. So please follow the show at and share it. Okay, so that's really gonna do it. This is the third day of recording. I started recording this on Tuesday. It is now Thursday night, and I'm finally completing it. But we got it done. I know it's super late, so I appreciate your understanding and letting me get it out there. The streak rolls on. The streak rolls on despite its lateness. So thank you so much. I am grateful for your continued support and your continued listening. And of course, we'll catch you next week with a fresh new one. So until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company nor Lucasfilm Limited and is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names and sounds and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is intellectual property of Path of the Jedi unless otherwise indicated.